People need to know that tax is voluntary. Maybe it's just voluntary for the rich because their accountants know these like tax loopholes that they can take advantage of. Tax is voluntary. There is no one ever in the history of our land that has ever been done for not paying tax when they've not signed a tax return. A strong economy is not about how much money you have in the economy. It's about access to resources.
What's up, guys, and welcome back to another episode of the Podghost Podcast. Joining me today for episode 4 now is the amazing Sir Toshi. Welcome back. Toshi, how are you?
I'm all right, mate. It's good to be back.
Toshi, since the last episode, I've had so many messages, mate, and I wanted to go straight to the point. You touched up on the taxation laws, treason, all this sort of stuff. I want to go straight into that, mate. Tell us more about that sort of genre, that sort of vibe where people don't actually understand the taxation laws. Like someone like me, you know, I'm oblivious to most of it. So take it away, mate.
All right, yeah. So in the last podcast, I said that we would touch on tax, and I said that we'd come back to that in a minute.
Yeah.
We never actually did.
Exactly.
So when I watched back to it, I was just like, all right, okay, that's really important. And the reason it's important is because any strong economy has competing businesses in it, like small businesses that must be able to survive and thrive. Because a strong economy is not about how much money you have in the economy.
Yep.
It's about access to resources. So the classic story is Francisco Pizarro in the 1500s when he went over to South America, and he had the Battle of Cacamara with the Incas, and they enslaved them all, and they were mining El Dorado, and they were like taking tons and tons of gold and silver. He thought that he was going to make Spain one of the richest countries in the world. But all that happened was that he took tons and tons of gold and silver back to Spain, and all you got was an excessive amount of gold and silver chasing the same number of goods and services in the economy. So what happened was that Spain actually experienced hyperinflation and economic collapse due to all the gold and silver that was flooding into the market. Whereas,
bloody hell.
Yeah, no one knows this. This is sort of basic economics that people really need to know. Whereas England became a nation of shopkeepers. And that's why London and England became such a powerhouse. And as Nathan Rothschild said, I care not what puppet is placed upon the throne of England to rule the empire in which the sun never sets. He who controls Britain's money supply controls the British Empire, and I control Britain's money supply. So it's the control of it rather than just simply flooding a country with it, saying, oh yeah, I want to make our country rich, I want to make everybody wealthy. Yeah. If you just simply distribute a whole load of cash or whatever the medium of exchange is to everybody in your country, and your country has still got the same number of goods and services in it, all that's going to happen is that people have got an excessive amount, and therefore the cost of renting and the cost of all the base products go up, and you experience hyperinflation. So it's not about the amount of wealth or the medium of exchange or gold and silver that an economy has in it. It's about the access to resources. So what you really need is an economy with competitive small businesses, because when small businesses can survive and thrive, that's what gives us choice. Without choice, we have no freedom. It's that simple. So what we need is a medium of exchange that allows small businesses to survive and thrive, which means we need to be using an asset that actually increases in value, that businesses are competing for. They're competing to give you value. Whereas if you just simply come along and flood a country with currency or money, whatever it is you're using, that doesn't actually do anybody any favors at all. It has to be a competitive system. But this is what sort of brings me on to the next bit with regard to taxation.
Yep.
So as I said before in our previous podcast, we live in a free world. We live in a free society. We are free men and women. And the Bills of Exchange Act 1700 specifically says that every bill or request for funds must be accompanied by an invoice so that you know what you are paying for. If you get a request for funds or a bill that doesn't have an invoice accompanying it, well, that's a demand for payment. Like, why am I paying this? And this is what tax is. So people need to know that tax is voluntary. And you hear a lot of wealthy people saying, oh, tax is voluntary. And people thinking, oh, well, maybe it's just voluntary for the rich because, their accountants know these tax loopholes that they can take advantage of.
Exactly.
Yeah, they don't mean that. What I'm telling you, literally, tax is voluntary. There is no one ever in the history of our land that has ever been done for not paying tax when they've not signed a tax return.
Hold on, so sorry to cut you, bro. So what you're basically saying is, if we don't sign, for an example, on a self-assessment form, we don't need to make that payment?
Correct. Tax is completely voluntary. They can say, oh, you must fill in this form, or oh, it's a legal requirement that you fill in the form, but they cannot force you to sign it. They can, and it's your signature that creates the contract. And it's only after you've signed it, they're just, oh, well, you've signed this contract with us, and now we're going to make up some bullshit that you owe us more than your accountant has said that you do because we believe that you've done the creative accounting. But believe me, if your signature is not on that tax return, they can't do fuck all. Literally nothing. This is why whenever corporations don't pay tax, all they can do is name and shame them. That's it. They name and shame these big corporations.
Funny you said that, because while you've been talking, I'm trying to think about, do I know anyone or have I seen any high profile case where people haven't paid tax and they go to prison for it? I actually can't think about it.
There are plenty of people that have been done for tax and they've been made bankrupt.
They've been in prison, have they?
Well, the thing is, though, it depends whether or not they've signed the tax return. If they've signed it, then the government feels that they have a contract with you.
Wow.
That is it. It is literally voluntary. Because, like I said before, if it's not voluntary, it's tyranny. And if it's tyranny, we are not living in a democracy. And the government are public servants. They have got no authority over us whatsoever. Literally none. And this is where I need to explain to the listeners here the difference between legislation, acts of parliament, statutes, and common law. So this is how it works. The only thing that applies to us in this economy, in this society, is common law. And common law is very simple. It is this. It's act in honour, do no harm, cause no injury or loss. That's it. So have you signed a contract with somebody? If there's no contract, there's no obligation. If you've committed a crime, well, there has to be a victim. That is it. But the government, because the government is so big, they have to regulate themselves. And this is what so many people are confused about. So this is the difference between legislation, acts of parliament, and statutes. So legislation, when a government legislates itself, legislation is just simply them deciding how they are going to treat something. How are they going to prioritize it? What level of importance does something have? That's legislation. Literally, how are we going to treat this particular situation or this topic? What are we going to do? What priority does it have? That's legislation, and it only applies to them. It doesn't apply to us. It's just them. This is how we're going to legislate this. An act of parliament is literally how they are going to behave towards something. If a situation occurs, they're like, this is how we're going to act towards it. This is how we are going to behave towards it. That's what an act of parliament is. And so again, acts and legislation are just simply rules. They're just rules that they set for themselves, for example, the Nolan principles. But they can't be imprisoned for breaking legislation or acts of parliament. However, they can be imprisoned if they break their own statutes. Now, statutes are the laws that parliament writes for itself. And if they break a statute, they can end up in prison themselves. That's it. But it doesn't apply to us. It doesn't apply to us at all. And this is what, because people are ignorant of this, they're just like, oh, this is how the government are legislating this, and this is how the government are acting towards this, and they've written this statute. So, what's that got to do with me? They didn't write that for me. They've got no authority over me whatsoever. They wrote that to regulate themselves so that they can function properly. But because people are so ignorant of this, they have literally no idea. Which leads me on to the Crown Agents Act of 1995.
Let's go.
So what happened in the Crown Agents Act of 1995, and I think this was under Tony Blair, they moved all Crown agents, and Crown agents are public servants. They act between the public and the monarch itself. That's it. So that there is dialogue between the two. They are public servants. That's it. Now, public servants have a duty to the public. That's it. Now, what Tony Blair did, very cleverly, under the 1995 Crown Agents Act, is that he moved all Crown agents under the Companies Act. Now, this means that all Crown agents are now corporations. And the only obligation a corporation has is to its shareholders. And that means if you've got rid of all Crown agents, it means that there is no way of paying tax because there is no tax office. Everything is now corporate. Tax has to go into a public purse, not into private corporate pockets. And that is what's happening at the moment. Right now, there is no way for you to pay tax. There is no organization to pay tax to because everything is a corporation. Literally, whenever you receive a demand for payment, which is a breach of the peace into your personal home, it's literally no different from McDonald's asking you to give them money, give them funds. That's it. McDonald's is a private corporation, and all they've done is they've turned HMRC, they've even turned the monarch himself into a corporate office. Everything is corporate now. That's why nothing is getting done. That's why this country is going to shit. Because they are profiting from our funds. Whenever we pay tax, 100% of that tax should be spent because they have got no right to keep it for profits whatsoever. Because it's our funds. It goes into a public purse and it's spent on public services. Whereas now, they're profiting from it. They're just like, actually, we'll cut corners here, we'll cut corners there. We'll make it look like we're doing a little bit now and again. But in actual fact, what we're going to do is just put it in our pockets and like David Lammy, start spending it on private jets and gourmet meals and all this fucking shit. I'm not joking, mate. That is what they're doing. And Parliament now, you'll notice whenever you go into the Houses of Parliament and the House of Commons and all that, everything is maritime. That's why you have Mr. Speaker. That's why they're saying, oh, my honourable friend, Mr. So-and-so. As we said on a previous episode, MR stands for maritime jurisdiction, which means they are corporate entities and they have no rights whatsoever.
Yep.
So that's a massive issue. And then this brings me on to the next topic of what happened in 1971. So this is where all this shit started. All of this shit started in 1971. So first of all, on the 24th of January, 1971, the Club of Rome, which is probably one of the most insidious and most dangerous organizations, secret societies that very few people know about, they rebranded themselves to the World Economic Forum. And so the World Economic Forum is just simply the propaganda arm of the deep state where they come up with all this bullshit about environmental sustainable goals. All this crap. Oh yeah, we're going to dismantle the energy infrastructure for green energy. Everybody's going to have solar panels and wind farms, even though the wind farms, they freeze during the winter and they get too hot during the summer. And when they stop working, we need to power them with diesel engines. It's absolutely insane. They are dismantling the energy infrastructure. Oh, and by the way, just in case you didn't know this, just look, you know how we brought up 9/11 on one of our episodes? Well, just type in Hurricane Erin, the 9/11 hurricane. Not many people know about this. On the morning of 9/11, there was a Category 5 hurricane just off the coast of New York. And they manufactured this hurricane. because they used it as like a Dyson to transport all the dust that was created from the collapse of the towers, because all the evidence was in the dust, all the microparticles for you to actually find out how they'd actually done it. It was sucked up by this hurricane. And this hurricane literally was off the coast of New York, and it just hovered there. It made its way up from the Gulf Stream, hovered there for like literally a day or two, and then just simply moved on and disappeared. And anybody who watched that was like, hold on a minute, there's a Category 5 hurricane that could have landed in New York. It would have been absolutely catastrophic for everybody. A Category 5 hurricane. So they are manipulating the weather, which means now they're just, oh yeah, you know, you need to give up your farmland for solar panels. Well, they can control the weather. Literally, that's what you get. Like, all you got to do is look at the British Grand Prix this year. You had perfectly blue skies, and then a fucking massive black cloud right over where the race took place. It's like, oh, hold on a minute. Where's the fucking weather front? You don't just get a fucking storm cloud in the middle of a blue sky day. You have a weather front that comes in that creates a storm. Was they're not doing that anymore. Literally, just look at it. There was an image that I saw. You've got blue skies, and literally there's a jet black cloud that just suddenly unleashes. And they said, oh, well, you know, it's raining on the track. This is biblical, is what they said. They're manipulating the weather, mate. The knowledge and the technology that they have is just mind blowing. And I've gone on this to sort of like other podcasts as well. But again, this kind of like leads me on to why people can't believe this right now. And this is something new that I wanna drop on your show. But before
exclusive.
It is an exclusive, yeah. But before we go on to this next topic, is there anything you want to ask me about what I've just said?
Bro, to be honest, I'm taking it all in. And it made so much sense. I think you explained it really well, man. I told you, whenever you come on, I'm always like, I'm in thinking mode the whole time, even off camera. The thing that got me most was the way they control the world, man. Like, the weather stuff. I've been talking about this for so many years now. That, you know, on such a normal day, out of nowhere, it starts raining. Mm-hmm. It's funny if I was just talking to my really close friend the other day, and I said to him that he was getting some housework done, and I said to him, you can't really trust the weather in this country. And he goes to me, 7 days the forecast is showing, it's going to be bright sunny day. Trust me, bang on, I think 1 p.m, 2 p.m, thunderstorm rain. No one picks it up, nothing. So when you were talking, I kind of like thought about that conversation that I had, and I thought, bruv, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right, by the way they're just doing all this sort of stuff, and we're so oblivious to it. We're just like, we just think it's normal now.
Yeah, like, for example, we had northern lights over London, like, just recently in the south of England.
Mad.
Like, when have you ever seen northern lights? It's ridiculous. All you've got to do is type in HAARP, HAARP, and you'll see the weather manipulation stations that they've got. We are talking huge amounts of energy consumption that they fire into the stratosphere, and it bounces back. And literally, this is where they can create earthquakes from above rather than actually below it. And this is what they suspect happened to what triggered the earthquake in Christchurch in New Zealand. It was they were testing out these machines that they've got.
Because surely they must have side effects, because you can't test things out without, as they say, using a guinea pig. You can't test these things that mankind kind of like a normal person won't be able to even think about. This sort of magnitude. You know what I'm trying to say? And for us, it's more like when they try these things, I'm sure a lot of the world, these tragedies we see and these natural disasters that we see, we're not really going to know.
Snow in Dubai.
Yeah.
Honestly. And like all this flooding in the desert. Honestly, they are absolutely ripping the piss out of us. Ripping the piss, because they know that we're dumb and stupid and ignorant, and that people just simply won't believe it.
I think everyone's too busy, sure. I just think everyone's too busy in what they're doing. I feel like everyone's too caught up with their lives. Social media is the biggest distraction there is now.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's why they create all these apps. It is to literally make us go stupid, really. If you look at it now, without no disrespect to anyone, but the more wackier content you create, the more stupid content you create, the bigger you get. And I think this is all done by an algorithm. I don't think it's a thing where people would, you know, take them seriously once upon a time. Now it's more like, you know, like I say, the crazier you are, mate, the more bigger you're getting the endorsement deals, the brand deals, and all that, I think, plays a part with this whole thing we're talking about taking away your time to look into these things. Because there's only a certain amount of time in a day. Half the day spent on sleep, for the normal person. And then the other half, you have to involve your work, your studying, your family life. That's why no one has the time to really look into these things.
Yeah, and there's all that stuff that you've just mentioned. There is no substance behind it. There's no substance. There is no knowledge. It's all absolute bullshit. And that's why people don't know about what I've just mentioned about the Club of Rome rebranding as the World Economic Forum on the 24th of January 1971, where it became the propaganda arm, where they just make up all this bullshit. First of all, it was global cooling. Then when they realized that they couldn't follow that narrative, they changed it to global warming. Then when they realized they couldn't follow that narrative, they changed it to climate change. There's climate change. Well, the climate changes all the time. You know, but it just so happens that these weather anomalies that we're experiencing are becoming wackier and wackier. Well, that's just simply because they're controlling it. But they're like, it's all due to fossil fuels. That's another load of bullshit. Fossils are literally meant to be like, dead dinosaurs, or so Rockefeller said, that are sort of like gone to the bottom of the sea. So that means that there is a layer that fossils would be on. When they drill for oil, they drill way past that layer. There are no fossils where they extract oil from. Oil is a biological substance. And literally, just like you get sap from a tree, the earth naturally creates oil. And how long have they been going on about how we're going to run out of oil? Oh, oil is a scarce resource. They've been saying that for the last 100 years. Oh, it's a scarce resource. Well, how come we haven't run out of it yet? It's because it's replenishing. It's just literally it's more and more bullshit. Literally more and more bullshit. And this all comes from the World Economic Forum, like I said, which is their propaganda arm. But there are two other things also that happened in 1971. So as we've already discussed previously, there was the Nixon shock on the 15th of August 1971, where Richard Nixon removed the US dollar from the gold standard, immediately making all US dollar and all the currencies backed by it from the Bretton Woods Agreement in 1944 securities fraud. Now, this means that they can print currency from nothing, and it's not backed by anything of substance. It's literally bits of plastic with stuff printed on it. These days, it's just simply digital. And how I said before, it's impossible to pay tax now because there's no public purse that's been created. It's all going into private pockets. Well, the bank just simply prints currency from nothing, and then they give it to the government. That's why the government can go on this spending. They can spend it on whatever they want because they're in bed with the banks. However, what they can't tell us is, we just get it from the banks because they create this from nothing. Because if they told us that, we wouldn't need to pay tax. They wouldn't be able to demand tax from us. We would be like, no, why are you asking for funds from me when you can just print it from the bank from nothing? Why do I need to give you anything? And by the way, if you're asking for something from me, where's the invoice? If there is no invoice attached to that, it's a demand for payment and it's a breach of the peace. And the reason they won't send you an invoice is because if they send you an invoice, you would see it would be from a private limited company. All literally HMRC, all government offices. Companies. Yeah, they're all registered on Dun and Bradstreet. Every single one of them. It's just a massive fraud, And something else that happened in 1971 was document FCO, or Memorandum FCO. FCO stands for Foreign Commonwealth Office. And the number of this Foreign Commonwealth Memorandum is 30/1048. And that was drafted on the 29th of April 1971. And it outlined how high treason would be committed, sovereignty surrendered, and the monarch deposed when Britain joined the European Economic Community on the 1st of January 1973. Now, this document was published on the 1st of July 1971, and it was buried and hidden from the public for 30 years. 30 years. And so when it eventually became available to the public in 2001, well, this is when there were, and you can research this, barons petitioned the Queen to let her know that she had failed in her duty as a monarch under her coronation oath. And we know that Queen Elizabeth signed her coronation oath at the top, meaning that she wasn't taking responsibility for the terms and conditions in it, which meant she had failed to sign it properly, and therefore she wasn't holding herself responsible to her coronation oath because she knew that she was going to commit treason. That's why she signed it at the top. And all this happened in 1971. That's why we're in this like complete shit show, for want of a better word, as to what we're in now. But the fact is, because high treason had been committed, anything that they have tried to implement post 1st of January 1973 is null and void because it perpetuates the continued deposition of the monarch. So that means any legislation, acts of parliament, statutes, laws that they're trying to impose, completely null and void. So that's the situation that we're in right now.
1971 was a big year then, wasn't it?
It was massive, yeah. And one of the reasons, obviously, I told you in the previous podcast, the reason they orchestrated the Nixon shock on the 15th of August 1971 is because that was the 100-year anniversary of Albert Pike's letter to Mazzini, where he outlined how it would take 3 world wars to bring about a totalitarian one-world government and new world order. And they knew that once they had control of the financial system and they'd given themselves an unlimited amount of economic power because they had a world reserve currency that was no longer competitive to any of the other currencies, meaning they could be as economically irresponsible and reckless as they like without any economic penalty, that means they could just charge on forward with their plans, doing whatever they want, manipulating markets, bribing politicians, corrupting absolutely everything.
Basically having everything in your own palm, really, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and this is another thing that they do. They invert, subvert, and pervert everything. And yeah, this is literally the satanic religion that we're dealing with. So whereas you're meant to care for the elderly, now they are neglecting the elderly. Whereas you're meant to protect children, they're now attacking children. They're putting paedophiles in the classroom. Whereas the police are meant to protect and serve, they're no longer protecting and serving. They're literally, dictating and incarcerating. Literally, this is what's going on.
It's so true. Sorry to cut you. It's so true you're saying all this stuff because it's, as a parent myself, when I read the reports and the news nowadays, half the time I can't fucking believe what I'm reading, mate. I can't believe what I'm hearing. I was on TikTok the other day and I was just watching mothers talk about how right next to the school they've got these HMO properties with immigrants and ex-rapists and pedos and I don't understand, bruv. And
and you can't say anything about it because you'll get arrested.
No one can do anything about it. You can't just get up and leave. You can't just, a lot of people are getting up and leaving out the country, but, a lot of people can't afford to do that. A lot of people can't just get up and, now they've literally got no choice. They've got no choice but to send their children to schools and all this sort of stuff. So everything you're saying, Toshi, is spot on, mate. Honestly, and again, like I said, it's making me think about. I'll go off. I'm going off so many different topics right now where I don't know where to really stick and think about something even more, mate.
Well, I mean, let's talk about tax, for example. So one of the reasons people are finding themselves so short on funds is because everything is taxed. You pay VAT on all of your purchases. So you're paying tax on your income that you've already paid tax on. And they tax you at source because if you go to your employer and say, hold on a minute, I don't want to pay tax, actually, your employer will probably sack you. But they've got no, because they're in with the club. All these major corporations are in with the club, but you've got every right to go to your employer and say, I don't want to pay tax. You've got no right. That is my hard-earned funds. You've got no right to deduct that from source at all. Tax is completely voluntary.
Taxpayer,
yeah. I've got no contract with the government. And if the government does want funds off me, well, they can send me a bill and they can put an invoice with it as well. Otherwise, it's a demand for payment and it's a breach of the peace. And this is what I was saying about small businesses. We need small businesses to survive and thrive, but this is not what they want. And so what I was touching on on the previous podcast that we did is that if you are an entrepreneur and you're a small business, you've got to ask yourself, well, why am I paying tax? I need these profits to survive because I'm a small business. I'm growing my business. And yeah, that's right. They do have, you can sort of like reinvest your profits to expand your business, which is why Amazon doesn't pay any tax. But literally the whole point of tax...
Amazon pays no tax.
Yeah, they pay no corporation tax because what they do, any profits that they make just goes into expanding. Expansion, constantly. They never pay any, they never pay a penny in tax. But the point is, tax is voluntary. We live in a free society. If you are paying tax...
Not a lot of people know this stuff, Tosh, because if you think about it, me, myself, I don't know about it. When my tax is due, I'm making the payments, I'm doing everything, I sign the documents.
Do you want to pay tax? Who do you know wants to pay tax?
No one.
Exactly. So it's why are you paying tax if you don't want to pay it? So that means you're being forced. That means you feel like you're being forced to pay it. Well, that's tyranny.
Because we've been, we haven't been taught any different. And I think since young, we've been told taxpayers' money, tax this, tax that. If you don't pay tax, you're a criminal. This, that. The way HMRC and your solicitors and even your accountants will be like, "Have you paid your payment? Have you made your payment? It's due now." Like even now, I got a message a couple of weeks ago. Your January payment's due soon. So in my head, I'm thinking, okay, I've got to get this done. But what you're saying now, I'm thinking, listen, they're not getting no returns from me.
Well, the thing is, what you have to remember is that you are dealing with you're dealing with mafia. You're dealing with mafia. If you're going to go down that route of not paying taxes, you've got to make sure that you've got nothing in your name that they can come after. Because what they've cleverly done is they've encouraged private ownership. So this is why you don't own your car. The DVLA owns your car. You're just simply the registered keeper. So if you don't pay your tax, and you've signed the tax return, well, they'll come along and they'll take any possessions that belong to you, like your car. They can legitimately take it because it belongs to the DVLA. You're just simply the registered keeper. They're like, right, you might pay for that, but you're not having it anymore. Yeah. And again, your home, when you buy a home these days, is registered to the land registry. And the land registry is a private limited company. You are registering the property that you've bought over to a private limited company. Literally, they own your house. That's why these mortgage companies these days are no longer giving away the title deeds to the properties when people have finished paying their mortgage. You can go to them and say, "Oh, well, I finished paying my mortgage. Where are my title deeds to the house? It's my house now. I finished paying the mortgage." They're like, "Oh, we don't give mortgage title deeds out anymore." And people are just like, "Oh, okay, you just don't give them out anymore. That's fine." It's like, no. If you haven't got the title deeds to your property, it is not your property. It's honestly, so many banks these days are just like literally not giving out title deeds. And the reason they won't give out title deeds is because you'll find that they've been sold. Your title deeds have been sold in some collateralized debt obligation to someone else. So this is something else that you can actually do. You can say to the bank, "Oh, by the way, I'm thinking about paying off my mortgage. And just before I do that, I just need to make sure that everything is in order and that you've got my title deeds. Please, can I see them? Please, will you produce them?" If they cannot produce your title deeds, you can stop paying your mortgage. It's like, hold on a minute. I'm paying you my mortgage. You're meant to have my title deeds until I pay my mortgage off. I want to make sure those title deeds are there. Because if you haven't got my title deeds, why am I paying you my mortgage? Where are my title deeds to the property? I know people that have done that. But believe me, if you start fighting the system, they will come after you and they will kick you out of your house. Literally. So what I'm saying is, before you start even contemplating going up against the system, you've got to make sure that you've got nothing in your name. And this is why banks these days are not issuing trust accounts, because they've cottoned on to the fact that people are starting to put all of their possessions in trust. So when you put something in trust, that trust is managed by the trustees on behalf of the beneficiary. And if you have a private trust, they have got no right to inquire about it whatsoever because it's private.
It's private, yeah.
A trust is just simply a contract between private individuals who manage the affairs on behalf of the beneficiary. And they have got no right to find out who is doing what because it's private. Simple as. But they were just like, well, actually, how can you have a private trust if you haven't got a trust account? Because that's the only way you can manage the financial affairs of it. But that's what all the elites have already done. They've already got trust accounts.
Oh, they're safe and sound, mate.
Yeah, they can't just simply, close a trust account. But this is why really what you need is a Swiss trust account. But they are not cheap. They're really not cheap. But anyway, I'm kind of like probably about $300,000 to open up a Swiss trust account. But when you have that, I mean, these are for millionaires, billionaires that want complete privacy. I don't own anything. Everything's, nobody knows who the trustees are. Nobody knows who owns that property or that bit of land or that hotel or this area in London. No one knows.
And there's nothing like that in the UK, obviously.
Well, there used to be lots, but because the government is becoming tyrannical and now it's a private limited company who is literally out for private profits, that's why they want to take all of your profits. Because everything they take from you, well, that's plunder that they've got themselves. That's what's going on. They're plundering everything. So whenever you see the police driving around, you know how they used to be black and white? The squares on cop cars, they used to be black and white.
Yeah.
Well, now they're yellow and blue.
And white, yeah.
Well, why have they gone from black and white to yellow and blue? Well, I tell you why. It's because of maritime law. A red and blue flag means, like, if you're at sea and you're waving it's red and blue. I mean yellow and blue. Did I say red and blue to start with? I meant police cars are yellow
and blue.
Yeah, yellow and blue.
Right.
A yellow and blue flag is an indication that a ship wants to stop and communicate with you. So all these police cars are now operating under maritime law, indicating that they want to stop and communicate with you. That's why they're literally stopping you on your travels. They're just like, well, we're indicating under maritime law that we want to stop and communicate with you. That's what it means, ships signaling to one another. So when they actually stop you and they're sort of like, asking you questions, what they're actually doing is plundering you. They're plundering you because they're trying to extract your wealth from you. They're effectively pirates on the land.
Wow, Pirates of the Caribbean.
Well, yeah. So rather than flying the skull and crossbones, which is what they should be doing, they're now flying the "Stop, I want to communicate with you" flag, which is why they're now blue and yellow squares instead of black and white.
Makes sense, yeah.
Yeah, it's all, and people just don't know this, and like the deception that is being implemented is just so big. It's beyond the intellectual capacity of most people these days. And this kind of like how are we doing for time?
We're brilliant, mate.
Oh, good. This sort of brings me on to the next thing that I want to explain to you why people can't see what's going on. And this is going to be a world first on your show. Like, no one knows this.
Let's go for it. Brace yourself.
So this is all to do with mental health. And like what the hospitals and what the doctors want to do, they want to prescribe you a pill for every ill. They want you to say, oh, I'm depressed, I'm anxious. Oh, I've got a pill for that. There you go. Just get on these pills.
True.
And these pills will literally turn you into a complete mong. A complete mong. Like, you can't think straight. Oh, you're stressed out. Oh, just take a pill. I can't really think straight. That is what they want. They just want a load of zombies walking around who don't have a clue what they're doing. They've got no purpose in life. They don't question anything. They literally just follow the narrative and they don't think straight. That's what all these antidepressants things do. That people cannot think straight. So this is what people need to know about how their brains work. First of all, you have your spine that runs up the center of your back.
Yep.
On the top of your spine, you have the brain stem. And the brain stem goes from the top of your spine right into the center of your head. So literally, and the center of your head is where literally everything else stems from. So at the top of your brain stem, right in the middle of your brain, is an area of the brain called the amygdala. And the amygdala deals with all your self-preservation, survival instincts. It's all me. It's your self-centered. It's always sort of me first. It triggers your fight, flight, freeze mode. And the reason it does that is because that is literally at your core. Your core is to look after yourself.
Of course.
So what happens is when your amygdala is triggered, that generates cortisol. And cortisol blocks your hippocampus from functioning, which sits above your amygdala. And your hippocampus deals with logic, reasoning, rationale, visual spatial memory, assessment, judgment, sympathy, empathy, everything that makes us human. So when that is blocked by cortisol and your amygdala is fully triggered, you can't feel any sympathy or empathy, which means you can gouge the eye out of your opponent without feeling any sympathy or empathy for them, because you're in this fight, flight, freeze mode. But the amygdala is all about you, which is why they sort of call it lower thinking. When your hippocampus is activated, that's why they call it higher thinking, because your hippocampus is what deals with sympathy and empathy and visual spatial memory, and it deals with how to solve problems. Like, that's what your hippocampus does. Now, what happens is the thing that in your brain that connects both your amygdala and your pineal gland and your hippocampus is your pineal gland. And your pineal gland is what puts hairs on the back of your neck standing up on end when you're walking down a dark alley. It's like, hold on a minute, there's something spooky going on here. You need to look out for yourself. I'm not in a safe position. But also when sort of spiritual people say that they receive a download when they've seen a problem and they're just, I can see what's going on now. That's your pineal gland allowing you to receive intuition that is then being unpacked by your hippocampus, so you can then see the problem. And this lot have realized that if they can somehow calcify your pineal gland with highly processed food, by spraying chemtrails in the sky, by making you drink fluoride, by making you put fluoride in your mouth and all that, if your pineal gland is calcified, then you're not receiving any intuition, which means you're not going to see that there's a problem going on. And that's why so many people can't see what's going on, because their pineal glands are calcified. And all that happens is they get stressed because they know there's a problem. Stress causes cortisol, which then triggers the amygdala, which then triggers more memories of the traumatic event, which then generates more cortisol, which then triggers the amygdala, which generates more memories of the traumatic event. And this is when people get caught in that downward spiral, which eventually leads to suicide. A suicidal mind is a completely stimulated amygdala and a completely blocked hippocampus. But this is what I need to drop on your show now: the difference between anxiety and depression. So anxiety is just simply a blocked hippocampus, blocked by cortisol because you're dealing with so much stress, either from a marriage breakdown, loss of money, business, loss of a job, something like fight, flight, freeze, you're in a boxing match or whatever. And all you have to do in order to push the cortisol out of your brain is stimulate your hippocampus. So it's your hippocampus that pushes the cortisol out of your brain to calm your amygdala. However, if you've been in that state of fight, flight, or freeze for a prolonged period of time, the cortisol will actually start to dissolve the neurons in your hippocampus, which is where your memories are stored. So cortisol is literally like acid to your hippocampus. It will start literally dissolving all of your memories. So you often find a lot of people who are like suffering with stress. They can't remember where they've been. They can't remember the name of their friends. They can't remember faces. They can't remember anything because everything is stored in your hippocampus. So when your hippocampus has been damaged by prolonged exposure to cortisol, it can't function properly to actually push the cortisol out your brain and calm you. And that's what depression is. Depression is a disengaged hippocampus that's been damaged by cortisol, meaning that it's not able to function properly to push the cortisol out your brain. And this is why, again, first for your show, if you are suffering from depression, there are 3 stages that you have to go through. First of all, you have to dissolve the meaning. And literally, like when I say dissolve the meaning, literally nothing means nothing. We're all dead at the end of the day. Let's say you were sexually assaulted or raped, abused as a kid or anything like that. So what? So what? You're still alive. You still got 2 arms. You still got 2 legs. You can still live your life. You can still make decisions. So what if that happened in your past? It's gone. However, you can't live in that neutral state, because it means that if nothing means anything, you've got no inspiration to live. You've got literally there's nothing. So then what you have to do is you need to shock your hippocampus into functioning, a bit like kickstarting an engine. So, but the only way you can shock your hippocampus into functioning is by understanding how much worse the situation that you're in could actually be. I could be sitting on this sofa and have a crocodile like trying to bite my fucking legs off. Do you know what I mean? But it's not. The fact is I'm here in this comfortable sofa in your studio, quite enjoying this chat that I'm having with you. So things could be a lot worse. You know, I could be in Palestine having like bombs dropped to me. Do you know what I mean? Things could be a lot worse. Whereas right now I'm actually really quite comfortable. But the fact is, because I appreciate how much worse it could be, I'm grateful for the situation that we're in right now. And that's the third thing. You just need to practice gratitude everywhere you go. What am I grateful for? But you can only be grateful once you understand how much worse the situation could actually be. And you've initially just pushed the cortisol out your brain to prevent the stress. And this is the main secret that the cabal and all that don't want people to know. They don't want people to know how their brains work. So your amygdala and your hippocampus are literally like night and day. They're like yin and yang, black and white, chalk and cheese. One is completely negative and the other one is completely positive. So when somebody asks you, for example, is your glass half empty or half full? When I first heard that question, I was like, this is such a stupid question. It's the same thing. What's the effing difference? Well, now I realize the difference is massive, because are you focused on something that you could do nothing about? Or are you actually focused on something that you can do something about? If your glass is half full, you're just like, well, I've still got half of this left. I can still drink now. I can still use it to maybe mop my face. I can do something with it. Whereas if you're going around saying, oh, my glass is half empty, well, there's nothing you can do about that. And you're just, oh, well, it's half empty. I've only got half left. It's a bit like when you go to one of these, tellers in the supermarket and they say, don't forget to take your change. It's a double negative. They're saying don't and forget, which means everybody's going to forget to take their change because they're constantly reinforcing you, don't forget. And it's like, okay, well, don't remember and make sure you forget. What they should be saying is remember to take your change. Think positively. And the only way you can think positively is if you're stimulating your hippocampus. And when your hippocampus is stimulated, it will calm your amygdala. And the beautiful thing is, if you can stimulate your hippocampus for long enough, that stimulation will then start to stimulate your pineal gland. And your pineal gland will then allow you to receive intuition from the ether. And for those of you who don't know what the ether is, well, that's because Rockefeller moved the ether from the periodic table when they were changing the education system. Because if you were to take a drone and attach a copper cable to it and fly a drone 450 feet in the air and you were earthing it, you would get an electric shock. There is literally unlimited energy in the ether 450 feet above us. But they don't want you to know that, because if we knew there was free energy 450 feet above us, we'd start harvesting it. But this is what was in the era of Tartaria that they're trying to tell us didn't exist by changing the history books, because the Tartarians used and harnessed all this free energy to build these amazing buildings that we can't even build right now.
Wow.
Yeah, so I've probably been talking a lot, mate.
Bro, you know what? No, don't worry about the time, mate. Honestly, Toshi, it's amazing the stuff you're coming out with. I'm just trying to deep it now about the whole depression. It's funny because on this show, I cover mental health quite a lot. And a lot of people that come on, they all speak the way you just explained it.
Yeah.
They're going through something. In the end, they do either self-harming or, they'll completely actually go on the verge of taking their own life, or at least really consider to do that. And it's so true what you're saying. It's all to do with your own brain. The science behind it all. And it's crazy to think like that.
Well, I'll explain to you why people cut themselves, right? So when you cut themselves, people are just suddenly, what happens is your hippocampus kicks in, because you're just like, hold on a minute, there's an injury there. Yeah. I now need to focus on fixing it. I need to bandage it. I need to make sure there's antibiotics on it. Yeah. So what that does is it stimulates your hippocampus, because you now need to be proactive about the injury that you've caused. And that's what pushes the cortisol out of the brain and makes people feel better. And that's why they keep self-harming, because it's that sort of sense of urgency, I need to do something about it, which actually takes away the pain they're experiencing in their brain with the cortisol that's dissolving the neurons in the hippocampus, which causes such a headache. Honestly, the headache is so painful. Anybody on your show that is listening to me talk right now that's experienced this, they'll know what I'm talking about. The pain in the brain is absolutely insane. Because it's like your brain swimming in acid, and the acid is cortisol, and there's nothing you can do about it because it's right in the center of your head. This is why so many people commit suicide. It's so hard to get over, especially if you've been in that state for such a long period of time. But this is why, like I said, people cut themselves over and over, because it's that sense of urgency that they now need to be proactive about the injury that they've caused, and they do something about it that reduces the cortisol for a short period of time. But then the cortisol comes back, and then they cut themselves again. It's just that vicious cycle. And no one knows this.
It's crazy. If I was to ask you a question, if I was to say, for someone that's watching the show now, I know it's off the subject, what we're talking about, because we started off with tax, and there's so much to talk about, until the next episode. Is there any way they can, get help, or something that you might know about, or something where they can maybe even self-improve? There must be some sort of way, because I genuinely believe it's such a big problem. And I don't think, I had a really good friend of mine, Peter, if you're watching, really good friend now he's become, and he was talking to me about all this mental health stuff, about how difficult it is, and there's no solutions to the problem. Everyone can say, mental health this, mental health that, look, you're going through mental health. But he was so right when he said, where's the solution for us? Where's the solution for this? It's all good saying you've diagnosed us, but where's the solution? And I want to throw you that question, because obviously you're clearly very intelligent, and I'd love to get your view on that.
Yeah. So literally, this is what you have to do. If you are massively depressed and your hippocampus can't function, you can't think straight, you can't make decisions, you have to do little incremental steps. So, for example, you have to envision what you're going to do the following day before you go to sleep. So that means when you get up, you're on autopilot. You've already decided of what you're going to do, where you're going to go. And while you're doing these things on autopilot, it's kickstarting your hippocampus, because you're doing stuff. And your hippocampus just slowly starts to re-engage again. But it's a lengthy process, because it's already damaged. That's what depression is. But the first thing is recognizing that your hippocampus is damaged, because you can't make any decisions and you feel unbelievably shit. And the feeling is this: when you have a fully stimulated amygdala and a blocked hippocampus, the blocked hippocampus generates sensations of no hope, because you can't see a way out. You have no creativity or initiative to get yourself out of this situation. That's what generates this feeling of no hope, because you literally can't see a way out, because your hippocampus is blocked. So that's the first sensation, no hope. But a fully stimulated amygdala generates a sensation of ultimate fear, which is impending doom. And they're the two emotions that people who are depressed experience. It's no hope and impending doom. If you say that to anybody who's depressed, no hope and impending doom, immediately they'll be like, that's exactly how I'm feeling. I feel like I have no hope, and I have this sense of impending doom. So like I said, impending doom is a fully stimulated amygdala, and no hope is a blocked hippocampus. The moment you realize that, you're like, right, okay, I have a blocked hippocampus, I just have to start stimulating it somehow. And literally, you just have to take little steps by asking yourself, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? Try and force it to start functioning again, to push the cortisol out of your brain. And like I said, you have to go through this process. First of all, dissolve the meaning. Whatever it is that's generating the cortisol, dissolve it. Nothing means nothing. Yep. We come from nothing. We go back to nothing. As they said in The Life of Brian, what you lost? Nothing. Nothing means nothing. Literally, just, so what? Oh, I got my leg blown off. So you got another leg. There's somebody in a worse position than you. There's somebody that's got no legs at all. This has happened to me. That's happened to me. Well, are you still breathing? Yeah. Can you still communicate? Oh, well, somebody cut my tongue out. All right. Well, can you see where you're going? Are you blind? There's always somebody in a much worse state. There's someone that's dead. You're still alive. literally, I know that's like an extreme, but
No,
that's
it's
what
not extreme. It really isn't, Toshi. I think it's absolutely facts. What you're saying is, we as a practicing Muslim, someone who practices Islam, I believe in that sort of stuff. Just from a faith point of view as well, that there's always someone out there in a worse position than you. So if you're ever feeling down and out, or you feel like you haven't got this or that, you have to open your eyes and see what's out there. So, from start to finish, there's so much we can go into, but you're absolutely right in that, mate. I genuinely believe that.
They always say, if you're feeling depressed or whatever, look up at the stars, not down at your feet. There's endless possibilities when you start looking up. But the process is, first of all, dissolve the meaning. That's the first thing you've got to do. Take yourself back to neutral. Then shock the hippocampus into functioning by realizing how much worse it could actually be.
Absolutely.
And one of the things that happened to me when I was going through this is that I found myself addicted to true life crime. And initially I thought I was experiencing some kind of sick satisfaction from other people's misfortune. I was just like, what's going on? Why am I enjoying watching all these people suffering and all that? But I realized that it was because my amygdala was already fully stimulated. The only thing that a more stressful situation could do was actually start stimulating my hippocampus.
Oh wow.
Because I was my cortisol levels were already maxed. So looking at another problem, my brain had nothing to do, but it's like, actually, we better start thinking of a way out. And that made me feel better. So I was watching all these people going through trauma thinking, well, my goodness me, like, how do they get out of this? What can they do to make sure they don't get in this situation again? Blah, 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 blah. And that's what was actually, stimulating my hippocampus and making me feel good. But the way you continue that is by practicing gratitude. By being grateful, and you have to be like that all the time. So when I was recovering from my depression, I was going through that cycle all the time. Dissolve the meaning, shock the hippocampus, be grateful. Dissolve the meaning, shock the hippocampus, be grateful. And that's how you slowly get out of it, and slowly be thinking to yourself, right, what am I going to do tomorrow when I get up? I'm going to have breakfast, I'm going to make a coffee, I'm going to make the effort to go to the gym, I'm going to do this, and that's all I can think about so far. But while you're doing that, you're like, all these activities are slowly just helping your hippocampus start to stimulate again, and eventually it will heal itself. And that's how you get out of it. But the authorities and the mental health nurses, they don't want you to know that. All they want you to do is take a pill and be a monk. That's it.
And at that point, you know what? That was the best advice you could have given anyone. We'll make sure. There we have it, guys. That was Sir Toshi again. He'll be back soon, as we always do now. So if you like what you saw, make sure you like, comment, share, and subscribe. And until next time, peace, love, and respect. And Toshi, any message for everyone watching?
I quite like the line that we did on the second episode. Don't believe the bullshit. That's it.
And as always, that's it. So there you have it, guys. Peace.